Hey, everybody. So, um, I was trying to figure out like what I wanted to do, what I wanted to talk about, and then I remembered that I had some questions that I hadn't answered from you guys. I think there's like three of them maybe. So I'm like, well, I'll go ahead and answer one of those. And the question was about breaking toxic family cycles, and ancestral curses, things like that, okay? When it comes to breaking um, what appear to be curses on a bloodline or a toxic pattern that's gone on for generations, we have to understand what the curse is on the bloodline, okay? It's not a curse as in a hex. Okay, it's just a pattern of resistance to the universe that went on so long that it's reaping a massive harvest and bringing a lot of contrast. So what that means is a pattern of resistance was occurring in that family. So this is why you hear like in religious texts, they'll talk about families being cursed or, just being cursed. Here's what it is to lift the curse. The family would be cursed because there's a resistance to the universe, and having a resistance to the universe is like being in opposition to God. Okay, I'm not a religious person, but we're going to use this analogy so that you understand what I'm saying. When you have this resistance to the universal law and order, the way this realm operates, okay, and what's required for your evolution, you create a dark cloud over yourself. Okay, a lot of people, and because people are not looking within, they think that this dark cloud is coming from somewhere else. And we are required to grow here. We are required to evolve. Okay, we are required to change. That is the constant in the universe, is change, and we're supposed to be a part of that. Now, what happens is this pattern of resistance, meaning this person was resistant in a certain way, right? And they refuse to grow, evolve, change in regard to this specific thing, right? And instead, and this goes on so long that it's just going from generation to generation to generation. Toxic family cycles are nothing more than the things that no one has faced, addressed, or healed for generations. So instead, it's just being passed down for the next generation. So what you don't heal within yourself, you leave your children to heal. This is why in religious texts, they'll say things like the sins of the father fall on the sons. Okay, it's not that there's a God in the sky that's punishing some innocent children for something that their parents did, and so the children are paying for their father's sins. No. Okay, you have to have wisdom and understanding, discernment, and the ability to hear spirit. Okay, and what is actually occurring is not that these kids are paying for what their fathers did. It is the fact that their father didn't heal something that he needed to heal within himself, so then he passed it on to the child. Okay, so now the child has to heal it, and that's the way it goes, and it'll go from generation to generation until somebody heals it. So in order to break these cycles or remove these curses, you have to be unwilling to continue the pattern, and you have to deal with all the unaddressed stuff that your ancestors left behind. So say for instance, there is a pattern of a toxic cycle of alcoholism within a family, and it's just alcoholics after alcoholics after alcoholics, and this is just generation after generation where it's been going on for multiple generations. Well, at the start of that, there was some type of pain, something that somebody was avoiding, something that they didn't want to face. And this is not going to be the same for every family. That's why I don't want to get too specific, but I just want you to see where I'm coming from. And this was going on, and they didn't deal with themselves. They didn't face that pain. They didn't heal it. They didn't face themselves and their ways that needed to change. No matter what was happening in their life that was pointing them in the direction saying, hey, something's wrong here. You need to change. And this comes through a lot of suffering. It could be a lot of circumstances, a lot of contrast into the reality that pushes you towards change. And instead, this person is not dealing with their pain, right? Instead, they're drinking, and then maybe they are abusive towards their kid. Okay, so now the pain that is in them, instead of them healing it, they're passing it through the abuse, and they're injecting that pain into the child. So now this child is going to have a certain level of pain, maybe even in the same ways. And then they start drinking because they don't want to face it either. And so you see what I'm saying? So then it just goes on. And so then they may not be physically abusive, but then they're emotionally abusive to their kid. And now we have another kid. It's like this pain is being injected from one generation to the next. It's the same thing. It can be sexual perversion, okay? And that's being injected from one person to the next, where a child is raised in a sexually perverted environment around sexually perverted people. And they're not, nobody is dealing with that perversion and where it comes from and why it's there. People may be keeping secrets of molestation and other types of sexual perversion that are going on. There's no sexual purity within that bloodline. And it'll just get passed on from generation to generation. So the only way to break these types of cycles within a family is to look at what the cycle is, okay? And then you yourself have to be unwilling to continue it. You have to look on the impacts of that cycle on you, okay? And how it's affected you and how you're carrying it. And then you heal it within yourself. You face yourself. Okay, it's not about facing the family. It's about facing yourself and all of the impact of these negative cycles and this toxic energy, how it has affected you, and where are your toxic patterns from it? Where is the part of you that you've adopted from these different things? And then you break that cycle within yourself and refuse to pass it on. This is such an individual thing because each family has its own dynamic, okay? Because when you're dealing with narcissistic families where there's a toxic pattern of extreme narcissism that's going from generation to generation, you sometimes do have to address it with the family in terms of you break the pattern and not allowing the narcissism to be, you have to play along with narcissists in order for the impact of their behaviors to impact you. You have to, there's always two people participating. Okay. And if you continue to participate and interact with the narcissist, you'll become narcissistic yourself, just out of a defense of where you become overly self-centered just to protect yourself, because you've had to protect yourself from all of these narcissists around you. And that can go on for years until next thing you know, you're narcissistic. Okay. So because of that type of dynamic, you have to break the pattern, and either the people around you shift because they can't act out the same thing with you anymore when you have boundaries, and when you're dealing in a healthy way. They will either come up and heal, or sometimes you do just have to cut them off. Okay. So that's the only way to do it. So you have to be the one to face what all of the previous generations refuse to look at and deal with. And that's how you prevent it from being passed on into your children. Because here's what you have to understand. This is why it's about you and not just about the family. Because every generation that passed this stuff down to the next generation did not believe that that was what they were doing. They didn't realize what they were doing. Okay. They just didn't want to face themselves. They may have been blaming family members too. You could be blaming your mom and dad, and they could be blaming their mom and dad, and it can just go back and back and back. So somebody has to stop that cycle of blame and say, I'm going to deal with my part in this. I'm going to deal with how this has affected me. The pain that was passed down to me, or the toxic pattern that I learned and thought was right and how I lived it, or, all of that. So it starts with you. Okay. So I hope that is helpful and beneficial. I love you guys so much. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.